There are 8 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as a participant. For a menu of available commands, press *#.
Good afternoon. This is Sherry Takamoto. Welcome and thank you for joining us today to participate in the Stakeholder Feedback webinar for the National Clearinghouse of Rehabilitation Training Materials, or NCRTM. I direct the NCRTM on behalf of New Additions Consulting under a contract from the Rehabilitation Services Administration, known as RSA. With me is Natalie Soares, a technical specialist for NCRTM who works on this team to support webinars. She manages the clearinghouse and provides technical assistance to anyone needing help making their materials accessible. Natalie, would you like to give the participants some of the basics of this Adobe Connect webinar platform?
Yes, thank you, Sherry, for the introduction. As a reminder, today's presentation is being recorded and all participants throughout the duration of the slideshow will be in listen-only mode. Please make sure your speakers are turned on and the volume is at an audible level. You may adjust the sound within the Adobe Connect platform by selecting the speaker icon from the menu bar, selecting Adjust Speaker Volume, and then adjusting the volume cursor from low to high. During today's presentation, there will be a designated segment for questions and answers. Please use the chat pod to submit your questions for today's presenter. If you're having any difficulty, please contact us at ncrtm@neweditions.net. Okay, now I will hand things off to RSA Program Manager for the Clearinghouse, Kristen Reinhardt-Fernandez. Welcome.
And Natalie, this is Sherry.
We're just going to ensure that the captioning is working.
Okay, she is connected now.
Thank you.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to participate in today's interactive webinar. We're almost at the end of the week. It's Thursday. I'm ready for the weekend. I bet many of you are too, and I hope it's finally feeling like spring where you're located. I think, unfortunately, DC is going to get some rain today, but it is welcomed after, I think, everybody's winter. And I only fear that the DC weather will begin that hot humidity before we know it. So thanks again for everyone's time and attention today. Thank you to our captioners. I want to just share that if I or other presenters are speaking too fast, to just let us know in the chat feature to slow down, or if there's something that did not come through clearly, please communicate with us so that we can ensure that everyone has an opportunity to interact today. So ultimately, the NCRTM, and that's what I'm going to, if that's okay with folks, I'm going to refer to that throughout today's presentation. Again, that stands for our National Clearinghouse of Rehabilitation Training Materials. This is ultimately for you. It's for our vocational rehabilitation community, and your feedback today is going to help us understand what about the NCRTM is most helpful and valuable to you. We want you to be creative and offer up your ideas about how the NCRTM can better meet your needs. We're only as good as what we are providing to you all, and this is our time to collect input and feedback, and there is no wrong answer. Everybody is anonymous, and I personally appreciate when folks are direct and say, I like this, and here's why, or I don't like this, and here's why, or this never works for me, and here's why. That's very helpful information. So please don't hold back. We encourage you. If you've been bottling up things all week long, now is your time to release, okay? I do want to take a moment for another housekeeping item, if I may. We will be sure to send out the PowerPoint slides if you did not get them in advance. We will make sure we do that. And as Natalie mentioned, we are recording, so make sure you're on your best behavior. And we will be sure to get the transcript out and any other kinds of follow-up post-webinar if you could kindly give us about a week to do that so we can make sure everything is ready for you all and accessible, we'd like the opportunity to do that. Okay, so the first thing I would like everybody to do to make sure we're all awake and properly caffeinated is to tell me where you're working, tell me where you're from, tell me who you are, who's on the line with me this afternoon. And while you're all doing that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. If we could advance the slides. So some of you may already be familiar with our National Clearinghouse of Rehabilitation Training Materials. We like to think of ourselves as the gateway to technical assistance and training materials. We want this to be a place to share and discover useful and reliable information. And as Sherry Takemoto mentioned, this is operated through a contract through the Department of Education within the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the Rehabilitation Services Administration. So what are we going to do today? We are going to explore some parts of the NCRTM so that everybody knows how to access useful and reliable information. We're going to engage you all about thoughts, ideas, and priorities for how the NCRTM might help meet your training and informational needs. And we're hoping that you will consider the NCRTM as the first place you go when you need to develop new training or to find sources that have been used by others that are working, and also, and perhaps even most importantly, to be a place for you all to showcase your products and materials that you've developed at home base. And thanks for everyone for entering into the chat box who you are and where you're participating from. I recognize many names. I know we don't have personal relationships, but many of the names are familiar. So thank you and welcome. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is introduce John Connolly. John serves as a subject matter expert for the National Clearinghouse, and he has been a terrific resource to me and Sherry when we came to him and we said that we wanted to put something together to engage the state VRA agencies in finding out what's working for you all with the Clearinghouse and what else could we do to meet your needs. And he graciously has offered his time and his ideas and his energy. So I really want to give John a shout out and turn it over to him for a brief welcome.
Well, thank you, Kristen. And I certainly want to thank you and RSA and also Sherry and the team at NCRTM to put this webinar together today. I think the Clearinghouse is certainly a very valuable resource, and given the number of folks we have signing on, I saw even one person from Guam, and also knowing that I think there were 100 lines, there was a max capacity of 100 lines, and we had over 130 folks register for the webinar today. There is a lot of interest in the Clearinghouse and how it can be a very useful and meaningful tool for VR agencies. And as we look at the challenges that come with reduced funding for training, I think that the materials on the Clearinghouse become even more and more valuable for agencies and staff. And I am very excited, especially about the third objective and how the Clearinghouse can also be a place for agencies to share resources that they've developed that have been vetted. I think, for example, recently there was a submission from Oregon VR, a series of webinars about motivational interviewing. So I think that's a great example of how agencies can also use the Clearinghouse to share their materials and share the good work that everyone's doing. So again, thank you very, very much, Kristen and Sherry, and I think I'm turning it back to you, Kristen.
Yes, thanks, John. We definitely were excited with the amount of interest in the webinar, and I have to say, you guys made us a little bit nervous. We did a dry run earlier this week. Sherry and I have been working to up our game, so thanks for pushing that. We really appreciate it. So now we're gonna have some fun. So let's get into the polling questions. We're gonna start out easy, and then we're going to build. So first question, is the NCRTM relevant to you? And we're going to ask you, I know we asked you this in the chat feature earlier, but just for us to get a better sense, we're going to ask you to tell us who you are. So you may be a VR director or manager, a rehabilitation counselor, an evaluator, a trainer, an HR specialist, or maybe a similar position, a business engagement specialist, an SRC member or staff, a state coordinator for the deaf, or if we, for some reason, didn't capture you, please let us know in the chat box. Let's see, rehabilitation counselors and trainers are in the lead. Oh, there's some others. There's some others that are on that are now in the lead. Who did we miss? I'm sorry if we missed an important group. Okay, so we're going to broadcast the results. Thank you, Natalie. So it looks like the majority of you are representing an other group. So again, I'm sorry if we missed a batch. And then we have representation, it looks like from everybody but perhaps HR specialist or a similar position. But everybody else is accounted for, so that's great. Okay. Let's move on to the next polling question. So where do you typically search for vocational rehabilitation information? And you may check all that apply. So it could be the NCRTM, RSA, a TA center, Google, other agency websites, the public library, or if we miss something, please let us know in the chat box. Again, no wrong answer. Everybody's anonymous. So it looks like RSA and Google are top choices among many of you. I love those that pick the public library. Our family goes once a week ourselves. And we'll go ahead and broadcast the results and close up the poll. So in terms of the NCRTM, a little over 20%. That's not bad. We can do better. That's why we're here today. And we're going to move into our third polling question. How do you use information that you find through these sources? So this could be to learn more, to improve your knowledge about a topic, to improve your practices, to teach or train others, to answer a question you may have, to keep up to date with what's happening, finding out about different requirements or guidance, and to share information with others. So how do you use information that you find through these sources? It looks like the most popular one is learning more to improve knowledge of a topic, followed by answering a question, and sharing information. So everybody selected something, and it looks like improving knowledge is the top choice. Okay, we'll close up that poll. And we'll move into the next one. How often have you visited the NCRTM? First-time users, welcome. Some of you may be periodic users, 3 to 5 times a year. You may be a regular user at least once a month. Or you may consider yourself a power user, that you use it often, maybe every day, every other day, several times a week. Well, welcome to our first-time visitors. That's great. And we've got some folks that have visited us at least once or twice in the past year, and we appreciate that. All right. Thanks for your help with that, Natalie. So speaking of power users, we've actually asked one of our power users, Mr. David Leon, from the Virginia Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, to share some of the ways that he uses the NCRTM. David, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to chat with us this afternoon, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here, and hopefully this sounds clear. First off, I have to say that I was shocked that I didn't know about the NCRTM earlier in my career, and was fortunate enough to go to a training at the NCRE conference last year. And since I have been on this site often, one of the interesting things when you have in your job responsibilities statewide programs, when you are out and about in your state, people see you as a representative of your agency and often assume you have answers to questions related to programs that aren't necessarily your own. And I always try to be a resource, or at least get those partners around the state information they can use while waiting for the person internally that I'm trying to connect them with as well. And we are often visiting the NCRTM to do that. One of the things I really appreciate is the event section. Not only is it a great way to see what things are coming up, add them to my calendar when I can, but when I miss something, I can go to the archived section and generally pull up the webinar a week or two later to catch back up. It also allows me to see trends and items that are of high importance around the country, which sometimes informs the work we do here in Virginia, especially with the programs I'm responsible for. And John had just mentioned the Oregon Motivational Interviewing Trainings. It's a great story, and it's a great set of webinars. In Virginia, we were able to bring some motivational interviewing training in through our Career Pathways for Individuals with Disabilities grant, and one of the targeted groups was our work incentive specialists, which other states call benefits planners. We did not have the funds to get all 100 people around the state through the motivational interviewing training. However, as soon as I noticed that those webinars were available, we sent out links to those 100 people, told them how we had brought motivational interviewing into the state, and our hope is that the other 90 folks will choose to go through some of those sections and at least get more on the same page. And it's a way to leverage resources that we didn't have the funds to really take everywhere. And that's just the event section. I also really appreciate the search. And another example, when I was in our northern region a few weeks ago for an event, I was working with someone who just wanted to better understand the subminimum wage and the changes with Employment First. That's not an area I work in a lot, but we were able to go onto the NCRTM, and while I had also connected that individual to someone within the state who's an expert on that, we were able to pull up PowerPoints from several states, that two of which this individual thought were great and would help explain to their staff more about the program in the meantime. And one of those PowerPoints even included a contact information. So I encouraged her to reach out to the folks who created that in another state. And it's really been helpful in connecting resources. And there's a lot of different technical centers that I get information from, and sometimes I forget which one is which. And the NCRTM is, again, a great place for me to go to. Well, I know this came from somewhere. I can't remember if it was an E3 event, a WinTAC, a YTAC. I can't remember which one, but I know the subject, and I can put it in the search, and almost always I can get to the information, whether it be a brief that came out, a policy-type document, a best practice, or sometimes it's a webinar that was archived that I missed. So I really appreciate that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't also mention in Virginia, Rick Sizemore and Ann Hudlow have a podcast that they call the VR Workforce Studio. And I believe this month it's Carol Doback from RSA that is the main speaker. And one of the great things about the NCRTM is the ability to give documents to be uploaded and then available by others. And I know that Rick and Ann have really connected with the VR disability employment community, and the growth of their audience has been amazing. But one of the things that Rick said just last week when I was talking with him about the partnership with the Clearinghouse was that the final ingredient in growing the podcast format was that partnership with the Clearinghouse. And it's been a great way to get messages that we believe are important to other people in the field. So I'd highly encourage folks to submit documents or their best practices. And those are some of the ways that I use it. And again, it's become something that I try to check at least every couple weeks to see what's been added and if it's something that will be useful to either myself or my peers in our state.
Wow, David, we couldn't have said it more coherent and clearer, and thank you for being a power user. And we did not have anyone who polled as being a power user, so I hope that after this, some of you will become those power users like David. Thank you, David, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, are you ready to visit the Clearinghouse?
Let's do it, Sherry.
Okay. So for those of you who are not as familiar with the Clearinghouse, we are at the webpage, ncrtm.ed.gov. And this is a clearinghouse with the top navigation bar that people are used to seeing. We have a member login, register and login. That's primarily for RSA grantees. I'll show you where to upload your own material later, but this is for grantees to be able to upload and communicate with their project officers and for their project officers to note what has been uploaded. We have a banner that changes based on what else is going on. Of course, we have a lot of accessibility resources for those of you who are not familiar with how to make your documents accessible. We have a number of resources that are available for you. I'm backspacing. Then here we have a Twitter account where we put the news in. We primarily rebroadcast many of the emails that RSA puts out, but we also retweet other events such as the CSA VR fiscal event that's coming up. We have, I'm going to skip the library, we have RSA-funded assistance and other resources. How many of you always have trouble finding RSA because many of the state agencies have RSA in their name? Well, you can just go to the NCRTM, and the first link here is to the RSA portal. We also have the RSA Technical Assistance Centers that you can find and link directly to them, see what they're up to, and get resources from them. These are the folks that RSA has funded to provide technical assistance to states around implementation of WIOA, followed by some of the RSA-funded projects. The federal partners, so if you're looking for the WIOA federal partners and where to find their information, that's here in the resources page. And then other resources. There's also a search engine for databases there. And you don't have to go scrolling the way I just did. You can just click on this top bar to find the section that you're looking for.
If there are some other resources you think that should be listed, take a moment and enter those in the chat box, or you could also share some feedback with us following the webinar.
And as David was mentioning, here you find RSA and technical assistance events. We post the RSA webinars as well as many of the webinars that are hosted by our technical assistance centers. Here are some events coming up. In addition, RSA and WinTech have on-demand webinars that don't have a set display time, but they're here for anyone to go to and find. And then about a week or so after events are closed, we try to put the link to the archived event here. So if you knew something was going on with the tax or RSA, you can, but you weren't unable to make it to that webinar, you can often find the archive links here if those are available. So I'm going back to home. And are you ready for me to show a little bit about the library?
Go for it, Sherry.
Here's the library. It was a box, but also it's available here in that top nav bar. And you can search the library for keywords, and those keywords are tagged to any information that was put into the system when the document was uploaded. Search engines like Google will read the full document, and if that word's anywhere, it'll show up. Ours is based on just the information that was put in when the document was uploaded. We also have these icons. So if something is funded by RSA, there's a $ icon so that people can see the types of things that are being developed with RSA investment. Don't forget to clear your filters, because if they get all blocked up, you're not going to be able to find anything. The other is we try to put up as much of the RSA information that's available. And Kristen, do you want to explain what's here and what's not here?
Yes. So I'm sorry, I think I might have lost you there for just a moment, Sherry.
Okay, so here when RSA provides a technical assistance bulletin, or there's a request for information, we will also post it here in addition to the RSA Management Information System. Is that what MIS stands for?
That is correct. And so, and also for folks that are familiar with the RSA MIS, I want to make sure we just don't confuse you with the Clearinghouse. So as Sherry mentioned, there will be material from the MIS that's also posted on the Clearinghouse. Certainly information about guidance and regulations and those kinds of things are going to continue to be housed on the MIS. We just try to disseminate and share that information through the Clearinghouse if by some chance you're looking for something and this is the first place you go. So we try to have it in a couple of different places depending on where folks are searching.
And if there's something that you know RSA put out that's useful to you that you want to that you can't find in the Clearinghouse, please let us or Kristen know, and we can go ahead and post it if it's something that's publicly available. Now, one of my favorites is what we have from the RSA TA centers. Under previous TA grants, the centers developed things and you had to know where they were and how to find them and which center posted them. But here we have the submitted materials from the Technical Assistance Centers, and you can just go browse through what they've put together and what might be interesting to you. Or you can narrow down if you just want to see something from one particular center. You can use these refined filters, and it drops down so you can see things that were developed by, say, Peacotac. So here you have just the things that were developed by the Evaluation Technical Assistance Center. And it says here in the current filters, RSA Technical Assistance, and then Pequa.
And as a note, if I may, Sherry, the TA centers all have respective websites, and so you're going to be able to access a trove of materials on those websites. What they upload to NCRTM are those materials that are best suited for wide dissemination as they're developed. Sometimes they'll appear both on the TA Center website and the Clearinghouse. If you are looking for something from a TA Center that you don't find on the Clearinghouse, then you will likely find it on the TA Center site. We work with them to upload as many materials as you can. For those of you that have engaged with the TA Centers, you know that they have a number of products and materials they've developed, and so we try to highlight certain ones here on the Clearinghouse and through our newsletters. I also, Sherry, I'm going to do a little commercial interruption because I noticed that there's quite a few participants representing the state coordinators for the deaf, so I got to give a shout out to my state coordinators. So the sign language interpreter icon, Sherry, if you would, there's some great stuff on here from prior and current grant cycles, and it's all free, guys.
And
so
Kristen,
some really good material.
The resources from the interpreter training are some of the richest resources that we have in the Clearinghouse. I am continually amazed by what they have developed, what's up there, and they're free. I mean, if someone's practicing learning how to sign, there's videos that they can use to practice. There's research-based information, annotated bibliographies. The list just goes on and on. These centers provide some of the nicest materials out there. Are you ready to do a search? John, do you have anything you want me to look for?
I can ask you anything? No,
yep.
I'm sorry. Well, given with the passage of WIOA, we've recognized our other customer business. How about if we enter business engagement?
Okay, let's see what we come up with. It says we have 7 records, and if you want to, you can take a look at that, or you can take a look at, for instance, we have, oh, you know what, John, I'm sorry. Business engagement.
Gary, did you clear your filter?
I did clear my filters, but I forgot that business engagement is one of the topic areas. So if you look at the topic areas that are available here, business engagement, did you see how there were 7 records before? Now we have 65 records, and that's something that was inputted when it was uploaded. Remember when I said if it's not in the description, it's not going to be in this search bar? This was a situation of, I go, why are there only 7? Because I didn't use the topic areas. So as a topic area, business engagement, there are 65 records here, things that are out there. If I wanted to narrow that, because 65 is kind of a lot of things to look at, but I want to look at maybe what are some websites available for this. Here I have a Department of Labor apprenticeship website and, the National Employment Team, the NET, John. Here's CSABR's net site, so you can find that here. Kristen, do you have anything you want me to look for?
Yes, let's try another one. Let's try pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS.
Ooh, I've looked at pretty one before. Sherry, did you clear your filter? So we see that there are 13 records. We have something from Idaho. We have some WinTAC offerings. And if you narrow it, if you just want information from the tax, then you can use that icon. And you see that there are now 6 pre-ETS sites. And here's one from WinTAC that would be, looks like it would lead me to a lot of resources. So I can click on that and get to the WinTAC Pre-Employment Transition Services page. So if you didn't know if that was WinTAC or the National Transition Clearinghouse, now you can figure this out. John, do you have any more?
Well, we talked about motivational interviewing before. Could we look up that?
Okay, for this one, John, I would start with motivational and not motivational interviewing, just in case there's, what I'm doing is I'm trying to use a keyword that's small enough to end up with a lot of resources. So under motivational interviewing, I have this, I have 21 records. And this motivational interviewing series from Oregon Vocational Rehabilitation is phenomenal. You can take a look at this, something on how motivational interviewing is research-based for those of you who are under pressure for providing things that are research-based. And here are a lot of the Oregon products. So that's some about the library search function. I'm going to close out, if that's okay with you, by asking you to join our NCRTM network, which is the last box on this site. If you click under Recent NCRTM Newsletters, you will be able to subscribe, or you will be able to find past issues. And with the past issues, we've tried recently to have some keywords in there so that you can to see, as opposed to this issue number 15, whatever that was, here's one that has some resources for new rehabilitation counselors. So we always have new submissions, upcoming events, and then here were some resources that we culled to help folks who are new counselors get up to date with what's going on in vocational rehabilitation. We also have, we also want to encourage you to submit materials or submit materials for peer review. We have a community of practice coming up that will be on optimizing understanding benefits to optimize employment. And just the submitting, you can register for an account, or you can submit materials without registering. We just ask for some key information. These are those terms that I was clicking on for the topic areas. You can also search our the database for authors, specific author names, if it was put in that way, the publisher. Everything appears in the Clearinghouse based on the most recent date. So the first things that you see will be the most recent. But these are the categories that we file things under. And I think I saw Chris Reed in the meeting room, and Chris was someone who helped us set up these topics that we now have today.
And please don't let that submission form worry you. We worked to create as many options for you to select items and have drop-down menus to reduce the burden on your end. So if you go to submit something and you start to get frustrated, please don't stay frustrated. Please send an email to the Clearinghouse. Sherry and Natalie will be sure to mention that a few times before we close out, and we can even put our Clearinghouse web address in the chat box for folks. Sherry and her team are at the ready. So if you're searching for something and you're not finding it and you're starting to get frustrated, or you're trying to upload some material to submit to the Clearinghouse and are starting to get frustrated, please send an email, and folks are incredibly responsive, and we're here to help and assist you, and we don't want you to be frustrated. We want you to find what you're looking for. We want you to be able to upload your materials. So we're at the ready.
And Kristen, one thing that has been challenging is that many of the materials in the Clearinghouse were not accessible. So to make them somewhat available, if you include NCRTM archive materials in the search, that will pull up materials as far back as 1990, but they may not be accessible. We do only post new materials that are accessible, and it can be a little bit intimidating, but we have these accessibility resources, and folks can send us an email, send us your document, say, hey, is this accessible? And we will let you know, and if there's some things that need to be done to help, we'll either show you how, or RSA has some money in the contract for us to remediate documents. So don't let accessibility get in your way. The benefit is that most of you are required to provide accessible materials, and so we want this to be a place where people go to find things that are accessible.
And I actually use that tab. This is Kristen, and just speaking for myself, I often use the resources on the Clearinghouse. I'm a super user, in case you all haven't figured that out. And so I'm there constantly because there's always something I pick up from those resource materials that the Clearinghouse developed in making materials accessible. And in fact, the Clearinghouse and New Editions has provided some technical assistance to other federal agencies and other grantees that have websites to support them in making sure that all of their materials are fully accessible. So we really appreciate that. And just to go back for a moment on materials that may not be accessible, we do have disclaimer language on the site. If you happen to come upon something that isn't accessible that we haven't tagged, please do let us know. We have combed through, and New Editions have combed through hundreds and hundreds of material that has been collected for decades. As you know, various iterations of the Clearinghouse have been around for some time. And so not some things were hard copy only that we scanned in, and so despite our best efforts, there's still some material that we just simply could not make accessible, or we didn't have enough resources. So we try to let you know that in advance, but certainly if we've missed something, do let us know.
So are you ready for some more fun? Kristen has some more polls.
Okay. So now that we have spent some time at the library, the NCRTM library, I have a couple of follow-up questions for folks. So for those of you who have searched the library for materials, or perhaps just based on today's brief presentation, tell us how easy it is for you to search the library, or maybe based on the presentation, how easy does it appear to be? Is it very easy, you're neutral? It might be somewhat difficult, or it might be very difficult. And we want to make sure that it's not a difficult task for you. I often receive inquiries, public inquiries, and inquiries from prospective grant applicants looking for material, and when I chat about the Clearinghouse and I start describing the library, I often have folks say, you know what, I've been there. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And I'll say, well, when was the last time you visited the Clearinghouse? Give us a shot. Give me a moment to walk you through where to find things. And I'd like to think, I hope that after those conversations, folks feel a lot more comfortable. And perhaps in the past, before we had an opportunity to really spend some time scrubbing material, making sure everything was relevant and up to date, perhaps prior to that, there were some challenges in finding material. But we hope we've come a great distance. We probably still have some ways to go. And that's another reason why we're here today. So it looks like most of you noted that it's been pretty easy, and I'm thrilled with that feedback. We know we still can do better. About 20% of you or so are kind of neutral, so we're going to keep striving. Perhaps as a homework assignment, maybe before you close out for the weekend, go to the Clearinghouse, set your timer, set your phones 10 minutes before you leave tomorrow, and just look something up. And if you had a pretty good experience, great. If you were like, this wasn't as easy as maybe I thought it might have been during the presentation, send us an email. Let us know what frustrated you or what you expected to get that you didn't. Okay, we'll close that poll out. I got more questions, guys, so stay with me. Okay. What type of material might you look for when you go to the Clearinghouse? Is it information to help you do your job, which ties into an earlier question that we asked about why you go to the Clearinghouse? Learning exercises, syllabuses, videos, issue briefs? Are you looking for guides or toolkits, maybe outreach materials, other information to share with your colleagues? Or maybe something else that we haven't captured here. And many of you are responding that you're looking for information to help you do your job. Guides or toolbooks and information to share with others are equally popular. And that helps us too, as we receive information from a number of sources and folks inquiring about, do you think this is something I could submit? That helps us to know what it is you're looking for so that we can best meet your needs. All right, thanks, Natalie. And just bear with us a moment. We're going to move on to the next question. So Sherry showed you all how to subscribe and access the newsletter on a monthly basis. And so we were just wondering if folks are receiving the newsletter. Again, no wrong answer. So this might be an area that we could do a better job of getting the word out and assisting you all in subscribing and making sure you're receiving the NCRTM newsletter. And Natalie, I might ask for your assistance if folks enter in the chat feature that they're not receiving it and they would like to, perhaps we could follow up with folks if folks are comfortable afterward and make sure we get you all signed up. I promise we don't share information with third parties. And we promise, we vow not to inundate your inboxes. Typically, the newsletters are once a month or so. Sometimes we might hold it if we know we're going to have some good stuff coming. It may not be exactly every month. It might be something like 45 days. So don't panic if you haven't received it. And thanks for folks for letting us know if you're not receiving it, and we'll get you hooked in. We also have spent a lot of time, and Sherry has been very patient with me, to work out the layout of the newsletter. We want it to be something that you could read on a mobile device or on your computer if you have a few moments, and we don't want it to take a lot of time. And so we've tried some different ways to highlight information and make sure that we're not too wordy, if I can say that. So if you're one of those folks that is really visual or that's just really good at layout of things, we also welcome constructive feedback as well on that. We're still tinkering the newsletter, so if you have some reactions, we welcome them. We want it to be something that's really useful to folks, and if you only have a couple of minutes, we want to make sure we're giving you what you need and not having you spend 15 to 20 minutes to read through the newsletter. Okay. Let's close the poll. And did I miss a question?
I'm going. About how does it come to your inbox?
Okay, so I think since it seemed like I'm gonna go rogue here. It seemed like the majority of folks may not be receiving the newsletter. So I want folks to hang in with me for a moment, and don't worry if you're not getting the newsletter. For those of you that may receive the newsletter, if you could take a moment in the chat box and let me know, is there something particular about the newsletter that's useful to you? Is there a section of the newsletter that is your go-to section every time you receive it? I'd also be curious to know, for those of you that are receiving the newsletter, how is it coming to you? Will it come to you from the listserv, or maybe through the NCRTM subscriber list? Does it get forwarded to you? Upcoming events. Thanks, folks. Let us know that's a useful section. I can see folks are typing, so take your time, and appreciate you all doing that. I'm going to give another moment. I know folks are typing, so I want to make sure we get everybody's feedback. And somebody, I think this is a really good observation. You know, I skim it, and if there's something that piques my interest, I'm going to go further. So that's great. Thanks for that, you guys. All right. Sherry, how am I doing? Did I miss a polling question, or am I on to?
You're doing fine. I think we should try. What we should do is ask John to ask about what you have viewed in the webinar and how likely you will go to the NCRTM first, and then we can close with your wish list, Kristen. Does that throw Natalie off?
I think that's great.
Okay. So, John, your question?
Well, thank you, Sherry. Well, we heard David Leon say earlier today he wished he knew about the Clearinghouse earlier in his career because of all the useful information he's finding there now as a power user. And so we're interested in knowing if there are people in your agency who, based on the presentation today, you feel would benefit from knowing about the Clearinghouse and would use it that are not currently aware?
And they can put that answer in the chat box.
I see a yes with an exclamation point right behind it. New staff. It seems like a lot of people are typing. We can see that in the chat box. So wonderful. Old timers too. Training, people are responsible for training new counselors, Special Olympic coaches.
So it looks like we have some work cut out for us to get more folks knowledgeable about the NCRTM.
Do we want to go on to the next polling question, Kristen and Sherry?
Yes.
I think that would be question number 9, Natalie.
So now that you've seen the demonstration today, and I know a number of you have used it, but there were many first-time users that registered today. So we're wondering how likely it is that you will go to the NCRTM before developing your own training materials and products in the future. Not likely, somewhat likely, no opinion, likely, or very likely. So we'll take a little time for folks to think about that and check the right boxes. Well, a lot of responses already. Likely and very likely are receiving high marks.
And if folks would prefer, if you happen to have a not likely and you would prefer to let us know offline, please feel free to do that too. I know we're approaching the hour. I don't want to abuse folks' time. I've got a couple minutes. We've got a couple minutes left. If you could just bear with us for a couple more questions, but if you have to log off for other meetings or commitments, please feel free to do that. I think we've got 2 or 3 minutes left, so we might be a moment or two over the time. So I'm going to wrap up the polling questions if that's okay. I think, do we have one more, question 10? And then I had one, I think I might have missed in a chat question.
Are we ready to move on to the last question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the last polling question is, how likely is it that your agency will upload one of your products to share with others in the future? Again, not likely, somewhat likely, no opinion, likely, or very likely.
And we should share it's not a requirement to upload your products. We want the Clearinghouse to serve as a vehicle to share and disseminate information with each other. And if that's something that your agency is comfortable with, then we want to make sure that we support you in that effort.
And for those of you who say it's not very likely, you don't have to say it here, but if you can help us understand what might be the stumbling blocks to sharing information, that will help us also.
And we understand you might be in a time and place where you're in development mode and you just may not have something available at this time, and that's okay too.
So I know there was a lot of new information shared for many of us today, and it seems like a lot of people are at no opinion and probably still processing the possibilities and the information, so we certainly appreciate that. And then next there's a big group of people who are somewhat likely and likely. So we appreciate your consideration of this, and I think again it's a valuable resource and something that hopefully we will make more and more use of. So Kristen, I think you had a one last question or comment.
I did. Thanks, John. So last but not least, thank you everybody for your engagement this afternoon, your super engagement this afternoon. I'd like to know what might be on your wish list for the Clearinghouse. And this is something you can also have a think on and email us later. But I'm curious to know if there are features, functions, in terms of the site, if you're interested in, we've gotten some feedback from folks about could we find a way to provide some information about free CRCs or CEU offerings. Perhaps we could create an icon specifically for state VR agency submissions. So I'm actually asking probably 3 questions in one, because features and functions are more developmental kinds of things on the site that we could create or develop in the future as we think about I call this version of the Clearinghouse the 2.0, so maybe it's the 3.0. And then if there's other kinds of materials or offerings that we could provide that we're not providing now that would be useful. Yes, I agree with more AI-VRS project material, and that is, it's coming. We've got 2 AI-VRS TA and training centers, and they are at a place now where they've got a number of products and resources. So I promise it's in the pipeline. That's one of my tasks over the summer, is to start to get some more things uploaded to the Clearinghouse. So thanks for that. And I appreciate the feedback from our students. We have a lot of rehabilitation long-term training grantees that work with our scholars. And so we also have been working with our long-term training project directors to identify ways that we can get information out to our scholars to submit perhaps their research, dissertation material, work that they've done in the long-term training projects. So we're going to continue those efforts, because I think that our scholars are also an untapped pool to provide information and help inform us about new and changes, new approaches and changes or shifts that are happening in the field. There's a good suggestion here to offer something similar to what the Summit Group offers through their inquiry process. So we will explore that a little bit further. And a couple of folks mentioned information about available CRCs would be helpful. We haven't quite figured that all out about how we would do that and how accurate or updated the information would be, but it's definitely something that we're trying to work through. Peer review material, information to assess training for new counselors. Hopefully I haven't missed anything yet. And other kinds of emerging and best practices. Great. So I'm 4 minutes over time. That gives us a great start for some things for us to be thinking about and working towards. I can't thank you all enough for spending your Thursday afternoon, if you're on the East Coast, or maybe morning, mid-morning in other parts of the country. Thank you so much and for engaging with us this afternoon. If you happen to think of anything after today, please don't hesitate to be in touch. Natalie, if you wouldn't mind, let's put up in the chat box it's actually up here. I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes. The NCRTM at neweditions.net, NCRTM at neweditions.net. They're very responsive. That's where you go for questions, to find things. If you have more input and feedback after today, please don't hesitate. We really do take your feedback seriously. We're only as good as your use of this site and the materials on the site. Thank you so much to John, to David, and to our entire New Editions team for working on today's presentation and making sure that we're best meeting the needs of all of you.
Thank you, everyone,
That's
for
all I got.
very knowledgeable presentation. Thank you, Kristen, Don, David, and Sherry.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one, folks. We're going to stop the recording and wrap up.
Bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.